The AI tsunami is here, and we're not ready. In our work with dozens of executives, we've learned that every single one of them believes that AI is a transformative technology. Yet, most companies are moving as if AI is an incremental technology. The truth is, AI is advancing at an accelerating rate. We are not ready for what is about to hit us. When was the last time you heard of a software company commissioning the start of a nuclear power plant and agreeing to buy its electricity for 20 years? Microsoft entered into a contract with Constellation Energy to reopen the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant, which has been shut for many, many years. It used to support 700,000 households. By my calculation, that's about $1 billion of spend every year for the power that will come from the plant, $1.5 billion to get it started, and probably 4 to 5 years. So Microsoft is looking ahead to 2050. And then you've got Sam Altman trotting all around the globe trying to raise trillions of dollars to build data centers and chip factories all across the globe. So the question I have for all of us is, what do they see in the future? And what does that mean for all of us? Now, you might say to me, well, that's long way off. So let's take a moment and look at what is going on in the present. There's a company called KoBold Metals, out of Berkeley, California. It's 5 years old. It has less than 200 employees. It is the first mining unicorn ever. They are disrupting the mining industry. So a couple of months ago, they announced the biggest copper find in over a decade. It's in Zambia. It's 1 mile below the surface of the earth. Now, if you knew something about the mining industry, you would know that it takes 10 times more capital expense to make discoveries of these metals today than it did 30 years ago. That's because the close to the surface mines have already all been discovered. So now we have to look far deeper into the earth to find these deposits. And so you have to ask, how is it that a small startup actually found the biggest copper deposit in over a decade? And they did it through artificial intelligence. And then you ask the question, what data did they use? The data was 100-year-old mining reports, radar imagery, and then they go beneath the surface of the earth and look for information about these subatomic particles called muon, drilling very, very small holes to actually get this data. They are building a repeatable science in the discovery of these metals. So if you put all of this together, this company is operating at the frontiers of exploration technology. And let's take a moment and look at what talent base they have. They are 1/3 geoscientists, 1/3 artificial intelligence, and 1/3 software engineers. That is the future. This is the way forward. This is what we mean by recoding business at the speed of AI. Let's take a different example. If you were here 2 years ago, you would have probably heard me talk about DeepMind's AlphaFold software system. DeepMind and AlphaFold basically challenged the world's best scientists at what is called a grand challenge in biology. It's a protein folding problem. What you have to do is predict the three-dimensional structure of a protein from its amino acid sequence. Now, the world's best scientists have been working on this for 50 years. There's this biennial competition, and the first time DeepMind entered, they won by a small margin. 2 years later, they win by a huge margin, and the problem was essentially declared solved for a certain class of proteins. Fast forward a year, they predicted the protein structure of all 200 million proteins known to science. It was an astonishing accomplishment. They put it in a database. And then they went quiet for 2 years. And I began to think, what the heck happened to DeepMind? Why would they invest all this money and then do nothing for 2 years? And of course, that couldn't be true. And what happened last month? They announced this new system called Alpha Proteo. So they took the insights they developed insights by analyzing the data in their own protein database, sort of how they predicted the structure of these 200 million proteins. analyzed that, understood much more about protein structure. And what Alpha Proteo does is it now designs novel proteins to target very specific molecules in the body. So understanding how proteins fold is one thing. Designing novel proteins is hugely important to drug development, because right now what they're working on is targeting molecules, which is very hard in drug discovery, that cause cancer and diabetes. Think about how fast we will move if we can design proteins that much faster. This is the new frontier for drug discovery that DeepMind is revolutionizing. And I want to talk about software development. I hesitated to bring this example to you because this is your world. You know more about this than I do. And everyone knows that software development is one of the best case studies, best use cases for generative AI. But Amazon is, in a typical Silicon Valley example of eating its own dog food, uses their own software. It's called Amazon Q Developer to support them in the entire software development lifecycle. And when Andy Jassy, the CEO, announced the results of what they had done, they upgraded 50% of their Java production systems in 6 months. You have to know that they have 1,000 developers who actually work on maintaining this code base. So saving 4,500 developer years in 6 months, that is a mind-boggling return on investment in generative AI. In addition to the savings, they saved $260 million more because this software runs more efficiently and is more secure. But I'm going to tell you that that is not the punchline. The punchline is not how much money you save by being more efficient. And I'm not saying don't be more efficient. Of course, we have to be more efficient. The punchline is, what will you do with the talent that you now have? How will you use them to develop software that will give you competitive advantage, proprietary software that makes you a more successful company, not just maintaining your old systems for a far better price? So let's take a step back and think about where we are in the evolution journey around AI. Big tech, as we all know, is in a $1 trillion AI arms race. These companies are spending massive amounts of money on CapEx. And they have valuations to match. OpenAI just got valued yesterday at $157 billion. So clearly there is a lot of movement in sort of the investments in AI. But here's the strange thing. US firms are very slow to adopt AI. The Census Bureau does a biweekly survey across a whole range of establishments, and they find 5.4% of firms are actually using AI right now. I hope that doesn't include any of you, and if it does, that's a problem. But if it doesn't, please make sure you get on their survey list. But the serious thing here is, what is the disconnect here? So what we learned is there's actually variability in this data. The tech sector, where software firms sit, is a much higher percentage of use than the rest of the industry. And guess who's slow? It's older firms like many of ours. That is where the disruption will come from. It is these younger technology firms that are coming after traditional industry. And then last year we were talking about McKinsey's $4.4 trillion impact of generative AI. And they were predicting a really rapid impact of generative AI. They also talked about $11 to $18 trillion impact of traditional AI. What always takes me by surprise is the $4.4 trillion got the headline, and the 11 to 18 trillion did not get a headline. I mean, how does that make sense? But that's sort of the shiny new toy phenomenon. And this year, we're talking about skepticism. Goldman Sachs released a report, citing very famous economists and others who are saying, this is too good to be true. There's too little benefit. What we will discuss today is, do they have a case? And then Sequoia Capital said, for the amount of money being spent, they did an analysis of, if you spend $1 trillion, how much revenue should you get as a supplier of this technology? And they said they're $600 billion short. Now, that is a huge problem for companies that are investing this kind of money if the revenues don't show up for the massive amount they're spending. So here's what's interesting. What's interesting is there's nothing interesting here. There's nothing unusual about this. Every time you go through a switch from one foundational technology to another, from horses and carriages to rail, from steam to electricity, we've seen this behavior before. There are companies that are looking to invest aggressively. That's always the way it is. It takes a long time to derive the benefits of this technology, because there's a lot of things that we have to do to make sure that we can actually capture the benefits from this technology. The question, of course, in this case is, will the revenues eventually come, or will they not come? And this is the build it, will they come phenomenon. I will predict that the revenues will come, perhaps not as quickly as we expect. But there is something else that's really important to pay attention to here. There's a catch in all of this, which is some of these companies, the supplier side, will not make it, because there are so many companies jockeying for position right now. There's no doubt in my mind that some of them will fold. The flip side of the equation is also true. Those of us who don't keep up will also fall by the wayside. There are predictions that that there will be brand new trillion-dollar firms that we've never heard of today, that in 20 years there will be trillion-dollar firms. There will be Fortune 500 firms that will cease to exist. And hopefully some of you will be the next trillion-dollar firm. But it is important that we move now. AI is what we call a general purpose technology. Just like steam, just like electricity, just like the internet, these are all things that we've seen. General purpose technologies, it's an economics term, that basically have three properties. The first, widespread, they have widespread use cases. Clearly, AI has a lot of use, any number of use cases that you can think about. The second property is that the technology must improve very rapidly. There's no doubt about that. Clearly, AI improves very, very rapidly. The third is sort of an arcane term called innovational complementarity, and you can forget about that term in exactly 30 seconds. But what it says is, for these technologies to be successful, two things need to happen. One is they don't work by themselves. So you need a lot of surrounding technologies and infrastructure to make this happen. The second is we have to make this technology our own, which means we have to adapt them to our industries, our companies, reinvent processes, invent jobs, upskill our people, redefine tasks. There's a lot of work that we have to do to make sure that this is useful for us and capture strategic value from it. Mercedes-Benz is actually a great example of this, because they took generative AI, ChatGPT in particular, and added it to a technology they already had called Mercedes-Benz User Experience. It's the software in their car. Some of you will probably be familiar with it. And by incorporating a generative AI solution into something that already existed, the customer experience in a Mercedes is second to none these days. And that's an example of adapting a general purpose technology, making it your own, and building it into your own technology infrastructure. So if you look at what else is going on in the industry, I said there needs to be two kinds of complementary innovation. An extensive AI system is being built. If you look at the stack, all the way from foundry to the semiconductors, the industrial supplier layer is getting a lot of attention. The data centers, the power, this is sort of where the big businesses, you know how they talk about picks and shovels when we were gold mining? These are the picks and shovels of the AI age. And so we're seeing a lot of action, and it's only a matter of time before this infrastructure is built out. And of course, it will continue to evolve and grow. I think it's important to talk also about models, the AI models that underpin much of this. And this is something that, of course, is these are the technologies that we will all use. In the last year, where we sort of treated ChatGPT as somewhat of a toy, look at what has happened. These systems have, number one, proliferated. There are so many more companies out there with generative AI systems, big models, small models, domain-specific models, all kinds of designs within the models that are different. But what is notable is all of them are moving to the top right. And to save you sort of the reading, it basically says all of these models are getting better, faster, and their capabilities are converging. Now, there are some differences between models, but this is an amazing rate of advancement. Another thing to say, then you say, where did this advancement actually come from? It comes from two major things. One is algorithmic improvement, which is we're making these algorithms more efficient, that they use less compute than they used to do. There's other tricks that they play, but which we won't get into today. The second thing I want to focus on is compute. How much computation are they actually consuming to be able to calibrate the weights of these models? And the answer will blow your mind. They had 10,000 GPUs for GPT-4, which is what we are using now. What they are currently training is consuming 100,000 GPUs. That will be right now, 2024, because it takes about a year and a half, 2 years to train these models. 2026, they're talking about 1 million GPUs. You know, so it's an order of magnitude, factor of 10 every 2 years. One of the interesting bets that's being made in AI, in generative AI these days, is that these models will scale, by which they simply mean if you apply more hardware to a problem, you will get a better model. That may not be true, but that's where the bets are going right now. And I think this is sort of really, really important, because a lot of the predictions, the projections that are being made about how valuable this technology fails to appreciate how rapidly and how much more capable these models are getting, particularly at reasoning tasks. Now, I'm loath to say that these models can actually reason, but they mimic it awfully well. On all these tests, like the LSATs and the MCATs and any number of advanced placement tests, these models are doing particularly well if you look at the data. And then, of course, agentic computing. So these are sort of AI systems that pretty much simulate humans. So rather than us having to interact with them frequently, they're autonomous and can conduct a whole series of tasks. And one of the ambitions is they actually control physical tasks as well, not just information tasks. And finally, any picture of AI is not complete if I don't talk about AI at the edge. Now, there are many scenarios in which there cannot be a latency between when the data is gathered, when the data is analyzed, and when we take actions based on the analysis. These require close to real-time, if not real-time, processing and action. That requires the AI to sit on the edge devices, which could be your phone, it could be your car, and it could be a train. So Hitachi just partnered with NVIDIA. They announced it literally last week, where they are building this whole set of edge solutions for the trains, which will increase reliability, increase safety, improve predictive maintenance, and so on. Now, I'm not wearing rose-colored glasses, and I fully appreciate that even though I talk about the benefits of AI, AI has a very, very serious trust problem. There's so many dimensions on which AI can let us down. There's privacy, cybersecurity risks are higher, there's issues around bias and fairness that are sort of ethical concerns that we have, and the list goes on and on. And these have to be addressed. This year, because it's an election year, we have to acknowledge the problem of misinformation as well. The misinformation problem on social media is very, very real, and it's being aided by AI, and AI must be part of the solution as well. So these have to be fixed, but let's focus on what the future will bring. AI will transform the economy and society. If you think about the future, it's going to be very, very different from today. A few years ago, we were skeptical about whether self-driving taxis would be a thing. In San Francisco, Waymo is now doing 100,000 rides a week. And Cruise, which left the market after the issues with the regulators, is back again with trying to sort of offer exactly the same service. So I think in 10 years, we will not recognize the world we live in as much. So what's your roadmap to the future? So in 1962, Hanna-Barbera released this show called The Jetsons, which you're all familiar with, looking forward 100 years. So this is the world as they saw it in 2062. And they got a lot of things right, which is sort of interesting. And my question to all of you is, what is your vision of the future? It is important to do the hard work of ideation to figure out where we might be you don't have to do 100 years, but you could do 20 years. And I think it's really important to spend time on scenario planning and think about how we might actually, what the future might look like specifically for your company and your industry. I have 3 sketches from the Jetsons, pre the cartoon. And it's sort of fascinating to see these sketches because it gives you a sense of what they were thinking of, as a reminder that it's always important to think ahead to the future. So with that in mind, how do you actually move forward? What do you do? The first thing you have to recognize is that you need a new operating model. Think of AI as being a full partner in your organization. And you have to think, so it's going to be more of a real-time organization. It's going to have AI, like I said, as an input, a very powerful input, just like labor is today, and perhaps more. If you think about what these AI companies are working on, they're not intending to stop at human intelligence. They're planning for superhuman intelligence. So this is going to be a very important player in your organization. But these are the 5 dimensions that we will talk about in a minute that you have to incorporate in your analysis of how to move forward. Now, you can't base it on hype. It has to be a very systematic analysis of what it will take to move forward. So first, vision. You have to reimagine the future. This is CathWorks, a fantastic company that is working on coronary heart disease. The state-of-the-art in coronary heart disease detection is something called fractional flow reserve, which detects the difference in flow rates before on the 2 sides of a lesion. That's a step that comes after the traditional angiography, which takes pictures through the insertion of a catheter. What's interesting about this is that the FFR is best practice, state-of-the-art, but it's not used as often as it should be because it introduces considerable additional risk to the patient. What CathWorks did was say, how can we do better? We know if we have more information, we can treat the patient better. And they said, can we use AI to actually generate the same information that would be given, that would result from the more invasive procedure? And the short answer is yes, we can. This is what I mean by becoming a frontier firm. So all of us have to ask this question. How can we do better than the current state of the art by using AI? That is the central challenge in front of us. That is what it means to be a frontier firm. Education. Strangely enough, all the research, maybe it's not so strange, all the research shows that you have to educate everyone in your organization about AI to be able to even get the support to implement AI at scale, and for all of us to be savvy users of AI. And it's more than textbook. You can't come to one of my classes and go home thinking you're AI savvy. You have to use the technology. PIMCO does that. To get the support that they needed to build their generative AI solutions, they made sure everybody in the organization had used the technology. This is really important. It seems obvious, but it's crucial to educate people on what AI is and how it is evolving. The most important thing, I believe, is you have to rethink the know-how. You have to rethink your intellectual property. Now, I'm all in favor of you implementing efficiency solutions for software development and having powerful, intelligent chatbots for customer service. That's all very well and good, but it's not going to get you to the future. To get to the future, you have to ask a different question. And I'd like you to imagine building a wall. No, not that wall. I want you to imagine building a patent wall and ask yourself this very simple question with a very hard answer, which is, what will you put on your patent wall? What are the investments you will need to make? What are the discoveries you will need to make to figure out what is going to move your company forward? And I think that is really important. And if you think about the examples we've talked about, what is CathWorks IP? It's the AI that diagnoses heart disease from an angiography image. Nobody had done that before. What is KoBold's innovation? Finding deposits of copper, lithium, nickel, whatever else, using their AI systems, using data that is available. What is DeepMind's intellectual property? It is the AI that allows them to design novel proteins. They are all moving the production frontier forward. My question to all of you is, what is your unique know-how that you can advance or develop with AI? And I think that is the element that is absolutely central to success. You need to acquire capabilities. No one can do this alone. You clearly have to have some set of internal capabilities so that you can bring this technology in-house and use it. But you have to partner. You may have to acquire firms to get all the things that you... The fascinating story about Lionsgate Entertainment, the studio behind John Wick, Hunger Games, Twilight, all these series, and they're partnering with Runway, which is a generative AI company, giving them their entire archive to analyze and allowing them to help them in both pre-production and post-production. But the idea is to generate cinematic video, high-quality cinematic video, based on new storylines that extend these franchises that are so popular and so valuable to the studio. It blows the mind when you think, so this is a story of augmentation. It is the directors, the producers, the writers who will all be using this technology. Think of the following scenario. You shoot a certain scene, it doesn't quite work right, and you say, well, what if I did it this way? What if the character stood here and didn't stand over there? You can do all that with AI now. You don't need to shoot the scene again, but you can generate new ideas. This is how they are moving the industry forward. This is a big one. Everybody's talking about job loss. I would urge you to think about it differently. I would urge you to think about job transformation. If you just look at sort of the data in the US, we're going to be short of population pretty soon, of working age population. So we're going to need these workers. I think it is much more, the decade that is coming is much more a decade of job transformation and not a decade of job loss. Yes, there will be job loss. I have no doubt in my mind that there will be job loss. But think about these jobs at the task level, because we don't automate jobs, we automate tasks. And think about how you will use your workforce and upskill them to be much more valuable, because that is what we want. So I think this is a really important component of this, which is how do we get more valuable workers doing more with AI and focus on job transformation, discover the new jobs. There's going to be many new jobs that will arise, but we have to invest resources to figure out what these will be. And finally, we have to shift to offense. Too many companies are taking it too slow, very risk-averse. They're playing it safe. If you look at the annual reports and the earnings calls of many of these companies, everybody is talking now about AI or generative AI. But if you analyze these reports a little more carefully, what you will find is most of them are actually talking about how they manage the risks of AI. They're not talking about how they're using AI in ways that they're going to win. So we have to be much more focused on offense. Executives, boards, executives obviously develop and execute the strategy. Boards must push them harder in helping them and help them shape the strategy. This is particularly important because at the end of the day, it's all about leadership. As a business school professor, we know this, as all of you know this, leadership matters. We have to have the right set of leaders who will push this agenda forward. But there's one more thing that's very important. We need a different kind of leader. This is not the traditional kind of leader that we're used to. Peter Drucker had a great saying, and he said, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself. The greatest danger in times of turbulence is using yesterday's logic today. And I think that is the situation we find ourselves in. You cannot use the business logic of the past. AI is a fundamental technology that is transforming everything. It is transforming society, and it targets knowledge work. It is transforming society and the economy in very, very profound ways. Leaders need to find the new business logic. They need to articulate a theory of the case. This takes work. It's not easy, but it is a journey that we all have to pursue. With that, good luck on your journeys, and thank you for your attention.